Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hello, my guest today is Elise Pettus. She's the founder of UNtied, which is a community for women who are not only navigating divorce, but also want help with life after divorce. So, Elise, welcome to A Better Divorce podcast.
Thank you, Andrea. It's great to be here.
I'm really happy to have you here. So why don't, UNtied is very unique, but I'll let you explain, how do you best describe what UNtied is and who it serves, who it's for?
Sure.
Let's start with that.
So I usually say it's a community for women navigating divorce and life afterwards. And then I have to say, follow up with that. I have to say, well, it also, we bring women together with each other so that they can sort of be amongst others who understand where they're coming from, and bring them together with women who've been through it so that they can sort of see that there is life after divorce. And the other part of it is that we also bring experts to talk to them. And you've been on our platform many times, so you're familiar. But the reason that we do that is because it's easier. There's more learning that happens in a community when you're hearing something new for the first time, learning about how to talk to lawyers or learning about how to figure out your net worth statement, whatever it is. It's helpful, I think, to do it in a group of others who are going through the same process.
Online community, but there's also in-person component. If you happen to be in the New York area, in Brooklyn, New York, Manhattan, you have different locations where you'll have events, I think, but generally they're in the New York area, I believe. Is that right?
They are usually in Brooklyn. We started out in Brooklyn, and it began as a live events group. We started hosting events once a month, and we found that women were connecting and meeting and then going on to become friends. And we then went online during COVID, and that sort of expanded our reach, and we gained new members in other cities around the country and some in Europe. And so now we do all of these, the expert panels and the info sessions are usually on Zoom, but at least once a month, we'll have some live gathering in either Brooklyn or Manhattan. We've also been to the West Coast, where we have a sort of a growing pod, and done some live events out there. And those events tend to be more social. There's a theme usually. Maybe it's around sort of dating or something related to dating or life afterwards. And we usually bring, live, to our live events. We'll always have people who are sort of new to UNtied and maybe new to divorce or recently divorced, together with alums who've been through divorce and now are really sort of, basking in this next chapter and can be an encouraging presence for those who are just starting out or, just like completed their divorce and now what sort of stages.
Right. It's kind of like I've done this, I've been there. I can share how I did it. Ask me whatever you need. I can serve as an example. Just putting both groups together is very powerful. And also it probably helps the people who have gone through the divorce to see where they were. And also, that was me, looking at someone who's just starting, right? And gives them a sense of accomplishment too. So it's kind of a mentoring circle.
Weirdly, they love it. And I mean, sometimes they come back to these events like year after year. In some cases, we've been in operation for 10 years, and we have women who have come back, maybe every year since. Sometimes they'll skip 5 and come back just to say, I saw you were having this gathering. And I just wanted to come back and show myself, because this really helped me, and I wanted to be here for others. It's really it's a nice atmosphere. It's a very warm and very accepting and compassionate group environment when we're gathered, and we're usually between, I would say, it could be a gathering as small as 6 people for some of our workshop, and it could be 25.
Hmm.
They, you know, because it's a smallish physical space, we don't have room for, say, 50, which is maybe what our largest Zoom webinars draw. But it can be pretty sizable, and you get a sense of different all kinds of different people and different economic strata, different jobs, different situation, different age groups, which is also kind of wonderful. Many a time there'll be someone who is in their 30s sort of bemoaning the fact that, she feels like, as many of us do, like, we've crashed on the rocks, life is over, I can't imagine, what's going to happen. And then to be sitting next to somebody in their 50s and be told that, in fact, no, you've got your whole life ahead of you. You have so many wonderful decades to look forward to. Can be such an uplifting message to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? So let's talk about why you started this 10 years ago. What made you create this community? And did you imagine that it would, well, we didn't have COVID and everything wasn't online. So I don't know if you imagined 2,000 people as a members, but that's what I think you are now at. 2,000 people are members of UNtied?
2,000, I would say 2,000 people who have been members at one time or are members currently. So
Okay.
they're either members or alums who,
You've touched
yeah,
that
right.
many. So let's go. So what made you create this community? What led you to do this?
Well, let's see. I was facing a divorce in 2010. My husband decided he was leaving, and I, and it was both a surprise and not a surprise, which is a common situation that many of us find ourselves in, and women especially can be the ones that are not even going to recognize that the marriage is unhappy because they have kids and they don't want to upset the nest. In any event, when this sort of hit me that this was going to happen, I didn't have any friends in my, circle. My kids were on the younger side, 10 and 12, maybe 9 and 12. And so I remember thinking that I know I could just get through this if I had a friend to talk to, or if I could get some advice from somebody who'd been through it. And I didn't know anyone. But then I thought, oh, there's the internet. And so I went online. And in my previous life, I had used listservs. I had a relative with cancer, and I found listservs could be a very, very uh, fruitful and nourishing community for information and solidarity. But I didn't find anything on divorce. I found, legal sites, and then I found some blogs that were sort of bitter and angry, like, about the affair or about finding the condom in the pocket. And it was sort of a gotcha kind of vibe. And I was really interested in connecting with other women around moving forward. So I muddled through my divorce. And as I was doing that, I remember thinking, wait, I was a journalist. I'm used to interviewing people. I don't feel very particularly shy. But when I was interviewing the attorney that I eventually hired, I felt so ignorant. And I remember thinking, like, I have like 10 questions, but I'm only going to ask maybe 6 because I don't want her to think I'm stupid. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm not shy. I'm not inhibited. If I'm having this problem, how's everybody else going through it? And so I got through the divorce, and then decided I had been a journalist, and I thought maybe I could do an online magazine that has a kind of a more conversational approach to divorce than the legal sites, but and maybe I could bring experts in. And then I realized, I think actually I should try getting everybody into a room. And so it kind of just sort of launched. I did some blogging for Huffington Post that had a divorce vertical at the time, thestreet.com, a number of places. And they were sort of about my personal experience of divorce and kind of researching different facets of it. And when the events began, I realized, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I always wished for. And it became clear that this is something that should exist, not just on how to hire an attorney or a financial advisor during the process, but then it's gone on to include everything. I remember the very first, the first year we did one about going back to work, because a number of the women who first came, not all of them, but a number of them had been home with kids. And what was hilarious was that it wasn't just divorcing women who came for that one. It was like 50 people showed up, some of whom, were married, but their kids were getting older and they realized, oh gosh, if something happened to my marriage, I'd be in trouble. Anyway, and then everything from, having great dermatologists, menopause experts, a lot of child specialists. We focused on different ages, navigating blended families, and we even recently have been covering the topic of co-housing in old age with other women, or so it really has become something that embraces all of life afterwards.
I love that. I remember when I presented to the group before COVID, so it was in your home is where you were hosting this. It was a whole topic on real estate and buying and selling homes and what you should know about divorce and real estate. It had a catchy title, but I don't remember it now. But it was really interesting. I'd like to have a panel discussion, and people had such different questions. So I love the energy of having everyone there. And there were people who had been through it, people who were just learning, just exactly like you've described it. So that was really fun to be in person there.
That's a topic that, by the way, the real estate, I think it was real estate in Splitsville is what we often
Yes,
call it.
that's
And,
it.
and that is a particularly good one to do in a group, because so many women, and this, I'm sure from experience, they have this knee-jerk response. I have to keep the family home. I absolutely have to. The kids would just die if we didn't have the family home. And it really helps to talk about it, both with experts like you and finance experts, and also just hearing other women, because for so many, when they really have to look at it, they find that, in fact, actually the kids are pretty flexible. It's me, and I'm guilty of this. It's me that doesn't want to move. I had just moved. And in a lot of instances, it really is a better financial move to sell and move. It
Yes.
just is. Not everyone, but many. And so I think it's good to have other people in the room opening up what sometimes can be a very closed, a closed box in terms of our thinking around divorce and what our priorities are.
And looking at, hearing about other options, other ways to look at it, how other people's experience with regard to the house itself, are you going to be house rich and cash poor? How will that work for you? What are the ramifications of that? Is your security needs really going to be met? So there's so many emotional aspects to that, financial, logistical, and being able to look at it from different sides, with a sense of with other people is I saw that to be very powerful. I might, in general, from all the the years that you've been doing this and all the different women you've worked with, what do you see as the biggest lift, that you see women getting from being a part of this community?
I
Other than
would
having
say,
access to others, but is there anything
yeah, I
more
think
about?
I would say uh, the number one impact that we have as a community, or a community can have, around something like divorce, which is painful and isolating, is it vanquishes shame. And shame can be um, such a handicap when you're going through divorce. It can keep you from voicing what's important to you. It can keep, the shame around my marriage has failed, can really be such a detriment. It can eat away your confidence. It can, it can, it can lead to bad decision making. And so when women are talking about the difficult things in a small group that they've been through, and and realizing that others are going through it too, and it's like we'll find courage together. I mean, there is, and just you suddenly start to see divorce in a different light. Like, you know what? It takes courage to divorce. It takes courage. And you start to see, as I think many have, it's like, wow, the women who've been through this, they have shown courage. They have shaped a life based on what they really want their life to be. And that is just, that's like, it's transforming for people, to kind of come in and think like, my life is over, my life is over. And then realize, I mean, I've seen women come to this workshop we do a couple of times a year called Grief and Gratitude. And in one case, I remember this woman saying, yeah, my life is over. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. And 6 months later, wow, I can't believe I thought he was the greatest thing. I mean, now I see it. Now I see it. And part of it was listening to others in the room, not talking about her situation, but talking about their own and trying out new ideas. One of the things that I see, and this was in early days when I was, leaving journalism, moving into this realm, I interviewed a lot of therapists, mostly couples therapists, and I wanted to know, what are the secrets to becoming resilient? Like, what is the difference between those people who become bitter and kind of, and the ones who really thrive after divorce? And it was, most of them talked about this ability to see, to embrace contradictions. I mean, contradictions in the spouse who is a great dad, terrible husband, or just the many nuances in things and also, this is a big one, the ability to see their part in their breakup, even when they were the ones that were left, right? And it's so tempting and so satisfying in a lot of ways to be that. I mean, it's awful to be, cheated on and left, but you get to wear the halo, right? And for the most part, the community gathers around you and wants to shore up that person who's been wronged. But in reality, most of the time, it's more complex than that. And once women are able to see that, and they kind of come to it on their own, they have suddenly more agency. Like, they're not victims. They see their own role in the dance that was this marriage that ended up failing, but they have more agency to move forward with. And so those things are the biggest pluses, I think, about being in a community like UNtied.
Oh, that's amazing. To realize that, to find the courage and to find the courage, which is just acting in the face of fear. That's all courage is.
You're right.
Feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So to know that you're not just being forced to do this, but you can choose to do it and choose to move forward. And then the idea of resiliency, because that victim might feel good in the moment, but it limits you, it traps you. It doesn't really feel good, but it could be a natural way to feel. Maybe that's just how you gravitate to that victim mentality, and others will allow you to stay there, but it's not to your benefit. You're never going to move forward.
We all know people who have kind of petrified into that, victim kind of identity. And you can see how things kind of snowball in the worst directions often. And it's not like, we all don't feel immense grief. Even if we're no longer in love with our spouse, there's a loss of the dream of what our life was supposed to be, what the family unit was, our place in the social fabric. All of that is lost, and there is heartbreak and grief that goes with that. So I think I think there is a time for feeling woe is me, of course.
Of course.
But being able to move through it is, I think, with the again, your word courage, with the courage to keep your eyes open to all the different possible realities.
And
So,
having other people there to help you with that. Let's talk more about the grief part, because I know you run that grief and gratitude workshop.
well, I actually host it,
When you
and I
host it.
co-run it with Jenny Douglas, who created it
Okay.
years ago. So we yes, we do it both live and we do it on Zoom as well.
Okay. So can you just talk more about that and why it's so
Sure.
powerful to have grief and gratitude in the
I
same?
know. Well, it's interesting because when I first started Untied, it was all, to my mind, I was going to help women find each other, and I was going to help them find experts like you by inviting the experts to talk to them in a space. And I was confident around the practical matters, but I didn't really know if I could, meet the emotional piece head on. And around that time, I was introduced to Jenny Douglas, who was, as it happens, also previously a journalist who had just divorced a little bit ahead of me, maybe a year or two. And she had done something kind of unusual. She got the house in the divorce, and she decided she was going to open it up to to make it a salon of sorts. And one of the things that she started doing was these divorce workshops. And she had done one, I think, and she invited me to come to it. And I liked her so much, but I remember thinking, like, oh God, a divorce support group. I can't do that. I remembered those kind of gotcha blogs, and I thought that's what it was going to be like. But she was so lovely. And so I went anyway. And when I was sitting in the room, it wasn't called Grief and Gratitude. I think it was called Divorce as Detour. In any event, she took us through these exercises, writing exercises. She read poetry. And as I was sitting there, I was like, this is nurturing exactly what those therapists said makes for resiliency. This is nurturing the acceptance that there's a duality in things. And this is Jenny. Jenny really has come to see, and I have too now, that your ability to experience joy is in relation to your ability to allow yourself to grieve when it's required.
Okay.
I know, so many of us in our, not to be like, yeah, but so many of us in the culture don't find time. It's really inconvenient.
To grieve.
I mean, I I recall this when my mother died. I was like, I have no time. I was just starting a career. I have no time to be sad. This is really going to mess me up. But it's important. It's
It is.
important because you are really cutting a part of yourself off when you don't, and it will come back to bite you. So, um, so the it's a 3-hour workshop, and we take a group of maybe 5 to 8 women through it, and it's a series of exercises with breaks, poetry, and it's both looking back, looking forward. I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's kind of unusual. It's structured so that you don't find things kind of spiraling downwards the way I had once, been fearful of. It's
Right.
really a supportive network, and it has created a lot of strong bonds that continue. A lot of the women that come back all the time to these social events met in Grief and Gratitude because
Oh,
it's
so
real sharing.
they really opened up to each other. They really could learn more about each other and connect. And
Right.
now okay. You told me there's a group of women who have been vacationing together. Like,
They, that,
did they meet in the grief and gratitude?
they actually met at that first event that I ever did, which was around finances. It was called the a Forbes reporter or journalist tells us the top 5 things you need to do if you're getting a divorce. And I didn't know anybody divorcing, remember, when I first started. So I wrote every friend I had an email saying, if you know any women who are facing divorce, would you be willing to give me their email? And so I invited I can't remember, 30 and 17 strangers showed up in my home. And that was the beginning. And I think there are 5 of them. And they go on vacations every year still.
About 10 years later.
Yes, 10 years later. Yeah.
Over these 10 years, what changes have you seen in the women that are coming, or what they're getting out of this program, or being a part of this community, I should say? Like, what's different about women, if anything, now versus 10 years ago? Are there any changes that you're seeing in the
That's
community?
a great question. I think, of the women themselves, I think I'm seeing more and more women who are the breadwinners of the couple, and that the divorce may or may not have had something, been kind of triggered by that in some way. That's another topic. But I've noticed some differences in the divorce in the divorce field itself. And I can only speak to here in New York, maybe a little bit knowledgeable about California, but not so much. So in the beginning of, in 2010, when I went through a divorce, I didn't really know much about mediation. I certainly didn't know about collaborative. And that may have been just the neighborhood I was in, the social bracket I was in. And when I did find a lawyer, I liked her, but it was very much like, I'm going to take care of this. You don't worry your head about any of it. And, that pluses and minuses, obviously. But now what I see much more often is, even if it is a litigation attorney, but really it's mediation is so on the rise, or has been on a very steady upswing.
Yes.
And it has influenced perhaps the entire divorce process, so that now even litigation attorneys want their clients involved, want them to be authors of this as well. It's not a matter of, sit back, sit in the passenger seat, I'll take the wheel and drive. It's like, come sit next to me. Let's figure out where we're going on this journey, right? And that is, I think, for one thing, it can save a lot of time and money. I think that idea that, the attorney drives everything can be disastrous in some situations if you have, a less than, I don't know, straight ahead attorney. You can end up spending so much money and going around in circles.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you seen that as well?
Our firm doesn't litigate at all. And definitely over the last 10 years, and it's been about that long, a little more since we stopped litigating, more and more people I don't have to educate people as much about mediation or collaborative divorce. They call more asking about it. They know about it. They've been educated about it. They know they don't want to litigate. They know they don't want a certain kind of divorce. So I see that too more now, that I don't have to explain the different processes to them as much. I still do. Not everybody knows about the different processes, but they certainly know they don't want to drag out nasty divorce. And they'll come to me and say, that I just didn't like that, the energy. They were just so aggressive. The other attorney I talked to, they were like, don't worry, we're going to take him for everything, and I'll make sure you get this and that. Like, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of it. They don't want that, or at least people that find their way to me anyway, don't want that kind of attorney. We call it, the knight in shining armor, the attorney who thinks they're going to protect everyone. And then they end up taking it so personally, you can't negotiate with them. They're just out for blood. And it's as if it's their divorce.
It's so true. That is so true. You're absolutely right. And I would say also probably this shift that we're talking about is also probably a little bit of function of how parenting has changed since, say, the 1950s and 60s. Because, we're very intimate with our kids, and we want to co-parent. We want to have a relationship with that other parent, if possible, that's as harmonious as it can be. And so scorched earth is so not you don't want to go there unless you absolutely have to, right? And we're so much more aware of that now.
Definitely. They know they're going to be co-parenting. They know they're going to be communicating with this person. So if they have any, sense of, basic intelligence and common sense, and the other person is reasonably emotionally healthy, you have to try to work this out,
Right.
Like at least try.
Right.
Any other major changes you've seen or any other shifts that come to mind?
Well, I know, that people are generally more educated, more proactive. That is a big one. And as I said, I think more and more women are the breadwinners, and more women are looking at having to, pay maintenance.
Yes, spousal
And I
maintenance.
wish I could say that everybody, in that boat is like, oh, but I understand. It's right. He's been home with the kids. But I think there's a lag that we haven't caught up with,
There's definitely a lag.
and
Yeah.
it's painful because I think that honestly, I think that there's that dance of like, well, they did decide to stay home and take care of the kids, and of course, there's been a lot written about like, but women are doing the housework anyway, and that could be again sense of control or sense of guilt, maybe about not being around enough. In any event, I think that women who are making the majority of the money, the moneyed spouse, as it were, those numbers are going up as we read about more more college educated women in our society than men, the man crisis, whatever, the boy crisis, and so we've got to figure that piece out. I know women who say, I'm not divorcing because I'll be dead before I give him some of my 401k,
You don't hear men talking like that, and I haven't for a
Yeah.
long time.
Right.
Women are not catching up yet to that reality,
Right.
that with the additional income and the benefits of being able to earn that income and have somebody else not have to earn so much of an income so they could be home, whatever the dynamic was. And maybe there was a lot of resentment during the marriage that they weren't keeping up with each other, but there's a lot of emotion there, and that's a whole other topic.
I know. But
I think we should do an episode on that actually, because that's a very complicated topic. So I'll mark that off for future reference. So Elise, what in all your experience, personal, professional, as the founder of UNtied, what would you say is your better divorce tip? Do you have one?
I do. I mean, I have several. I was thinking, which is the top one? One divorce tip is to find a friend who's been through it, even if you don't know. Often I have friends who say, I know, my sister's going through it. What can I do for her? And I'll always answer, introduce her to somebody who's been divorced and is doing okay, or introduce her to somebody who's going through it. So, create a mini community or a mini tribe if you can.
Yeah.
And then the other would just be to have compassion for yourself, because the more compassion you can have for yourself, the more you can allow that piece of responsibility. You could allow yourself to be part of the problem or what went wrong if you have enough compassion for yourself. And as we talked about before, that's important in order to move forward and take agency and control back. So those two things would be my top tips.
Find a friend, talk to somebody who's been through this, get perspective from that point, and then be compassionate with yourself so that you
very
can
tender with yourself.
be tender, accept that you weren't perfect,
Right.
and then allow yourself to move on, and you'll be better set up. Okay. I love that. And then you can go find that person to help you even more in your journey forward. All right. So tell us how to find UNtied. What's the website?
So we're at www.untied.net as a network.
And they can find out the programs there and the workshops and membership.
Yes, we are putting together our spring calendar, but it will be up soon. We have online expert talks once or twice a month, and we have in-person events once every 2 months. So, wherever people live, they can access the incredible experience and skills of people like you, topic by topic. And if they join as members, then they can look back and have the sort of the distilled gems from all, 10 years of these events that we've been doing with different professionals. So that, and membership is, monthly, so you can join. It's not a lot, it's $35, and you can join and leave whenever you feel like you need to or want to. And most of the in-person live social events are for members, so that, I can keep it down to under 50.
Right. Okay.
Anybody can reach out to me by email also, elise@untied.net.
Hey, well, I encourage anyone in the divorce process, contemplating it, in the middle of it, just out of it, take a look at Untied. It's a wonderful community, as you heard, online and off.
The other thing we have, which you're a part of, is the directory. We have a professional directory, which I love, because it's entirely filled with professionals recommended by women we know and then vetted. But when two members or two people in the community recommend a professional, that professional usually goes on the list. And so it's nobody pays to be on the list. And some people don't even know they're on the list. But we have attorneys and financial people, and we're always looking for recommendations. By the way, when somebody said, we always put out the word like an outstanding professional who really helps you through. And
I love that people can.
You're one of our early.
I am, and I get people call and say, "I found you on Untied," and I'm grateful for that. And also, I don't know when this episode will come out, but I am presenting. We're going to do something on postnuptial agreements, right?
I'm so looking forward to that, because we have not covered that topic. And I have been looking, who's the person who can really speak to this? And when you brought it up, it was like, it was great. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Me too. Thank you so much, Elise. It was wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's always fun to talk to you.
Yeah. So this has been another episode of A Better Divorce podcast. If you want more information about Vacca Family Law Group, reach out to us at vaccalaw.com. Remember to like and subscribe to this episode so more people can find it. And we'll see you all on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.